His wife left him and their 5 kids. 10 years later, she was shocked to discover he was an anonymous millionaire when she met him again. She left him and their 5 kids with nothing but a note. 10 years later, she reappears, stunned to find the struggling plumber is now secretly a millionaire. But the truly shocking twist isn't his hidden wealth, it's the ruthless legal war she wages, built on devastating lies, forcing him to fight back in ways she never expected. Subscribe, like, and listen now to hear how this devoted father protects his family and fortune. The knock on the door wasn't tentative. It was firm, official, cutting through the comfortable dinner-time clatter of Nathan Brooks' suburban Chicago home. He opened it to find 2 women in nondescript business attire, identification badges clipped to their jackets. The taller one offered a practiced, neutral smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Nathan Brooks?" "Yes." Nathan wiped his hands on a towel, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. His 5 kids peeked around him from the hallway, curious. "I'm M.S. Evans, and this is M.S. Chun. We're with the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services," the woman said, her voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight. "We've received a report containing some serious allegations regarding the welfare of your children and certain financial improprieties. We need to come in and speak with you, and we'll need to speak with the children individually as well." The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. Allegations? Financial improprieties? His mind raced, grasping for any possible explanation, any disgruntled client or schoolyard dispute. Nothing made sense. He looked back at the faces of his children: Emma, 18, suddenly pale; Liam, 16, frowning; Ava, 14, eyes wide; Noah, 12, shrinking back; and Mia, 10, clutching Liam's arm. Their confusion mirrored his own, rapidly curdling into fear. Allegations? What allegations? Nathan managed, his voice tight. "My kids are everything to me. They're happy. They're healthy. Who would say such things?" "MS." Evans held up a hand gently. "Sir, we understand this is upsetting. We're not here to make accusations, but we are obligated by law to investigate the report thoroughly. It includes claims of neglect related to your demanding work schedule and accusations that funds intended for the children's benefit may have been misappropriated." Misappropriated funds? Neglect? The absurdity warred with a rising tide of panic. He lived for these kids. Every long hour fixing leaky pipes, every late night studying, every dollar earned was for them. He felt a sudden, chilling certainty about the source of this nightmare, a ghost from a past he thought long buried. The neutral expressions of the DCFS workers, the sterile official language, it all felt like the opening salvo of an attack he hadn't seen coming. "May we come in, Mr. Brooks?" "MS." Evans repeated softly. Nathan nodded numbly, stepping aside. The click of the door, closing behind them, sounded unnaturally loud, sealing them inside this sudden, inexplicable crisis. His greatest fear wasn't losing money he barely acknowledged. It was losing the only thing that truly mattered. The battle for his family had just begun, without warning, right here in his own hallway. 10 years before that devastating knock, Nathan Brooks' world had imploded differently. He'd come home from a long plumbing job smelling of flux and sweat to find the small house eerily quiet. No sounds of toddler tantrums or baby cries. Just a note on the kitchen table, weighted down by a cheap ceramic mug. Carla, his wife of 5 years, barely 25 years old and overwhelmed by the relentless demands of raising 5 children under the age of 8 on a plumber's tight budget, was gone. "I can't take it anymore. This isn't the life I wanted. Don't look for me." The floor dropped out from under him. Left alone with Emma, 8, Liam, 6, Ava, 4, Noah, 2, and baby Mia, Nathan navigated a fog of grief, exhaustion, and sheer terror. Days blurred into a relentless cycle. Daycare drop-offs, frantic plumbing calls, turning down bigger jobs that took him too far away. Daycare pickups, cooking simple meals, laundry, bath time, bedtime stories collapsing into fitful sleep, only to start again. He relied on the kindness of neighbors, the patience of teachers, and an inner reservoir of stubborn love he hadn't known he possessed. The financial strain was immense. Plumbing paid the bills, barely, but offered little security for a family of 6. Driven by a desperate need to provide a better future, Nathan found an unlikely lifeline in the hushed aisles of the public library. During the kids' naps, or after they were asleep, fueled by cheap coffee, he devoured books on computer programming and software development. He had a knack for logic, a plumber's understanding of systems and flow, and he channeled his grief and frustration into lines of code. His idea was born from his own work frustrations, a simple, intuitive mobile application for plumbers and other tradespeople to manage scheduling, invoicing, and client communication efficiently. He called it Trade Flow. He worked on it in stolen moments, debugging late into the night, refining the user interface based on his own experiences in the field. He used a pseudonym online, submitted it to app stores, and slowly, through word of mouth and online trade forums, it gained traction. 3 years after Carla left, a mid-sized software company specializing in field service management acquired TradeFlow. The sale wasn't the $50 million fantasy of the original story, but a solid $8 million. After taxes, legal fees, and setting up secure, diversified investments managed by a discreet financial advisor, Nathan was left with significant, life-changing wealth. But crucially, the acquisition was handled quietly, credited to his anonymous developer pseudonym. Nathan made a conscious decision. He wouldn't change their lives drastically. He continued plumbing, though he could now afford better tools, a reliable van, and could be more selective about jobs, ensuring he was home every night. He bought their small house outright, paid off all debt, and established robust college funds for each child. He subtly improved their quality of life, healthier food, occasional trips, reliable health care, but avoided overt displays of wealth. He wanted his children to grow up grounded, understanding the value of work, not defined by money they hadn't earned. His millionaire status remained a closely guarded secret, known only to his financial advisor and his lawyer. His world remained centered on his kids, now growing into teenagers. Emma, the responsible eldest, heading to college soon. Liam, the athletic one. Ava, the budding artist. Noah, the quiet reader. And Mia, the social butterfly. Their home wasn't lavish, but it was filled with warmth, homework battles, movie nights, and the unwavering presence of their dad. Life had settled into a comfortable, albeit busy, rhythm for Nathan and his children. 10 years had passed since Carla's departure, a decade filled with challenges Nathan had met head-on, building a stable, loving home against the odds. The memory of Carla was a faded scar, discussed honestly but without bitterness when the kids occasionally asked. Nathan had ensured they knew they were loved, that her leaving was about her struggles, not their worth. The disruption came unexpectedly on a bright Saturday afternoon at Cantigny Park, a sprawling public garden and museum complex in the western suburbs. Nathan had treated the kids to a day out, a rare indulgence involving more driving than usual, but a promise kept for Mia's 10th birthday. They were wandering through the tank park, the kids clambering on decommissioned military vehicles, their laughter echoing in the open air. Nathan leaned against a fence, watching them, a familiar sense of contentment warming him despite the slight chill in the air. Then, a voice from behind him spoke his name, laced with disbelief. Nathan? Nathan Brooks? Is that really you? He turned. Standing there, looking older, thinner, and decidedly worn, was Carla. Her eyes, once bright and defiant, now held a mixture of shock and something else calculation as they scanned him, then darted towards the laughing children, counting them almost involuntarily. The air crackled with sudden tension. The kids, sensing the shift, grew quiet and edged closer to Nathan. Emma's expression hardened immediately. The younger ones looked confused, their memories of her faint or non-existent. Carla, Nathan acknowledged, his voice carefully neutral. He felt a complex mix of emotions, a jolt of surprise, the ghost of old pain, but mostly a fierce, protective instinct. It's been a long time. 10 years, she breathed, her gaze sweeping over the children again, lingering on how healthy, how well-dressed, how happy they looked. They're so big. She attempted a smile, but it didn't quite land. You look good, Nathan. Doing well. It was phrased as a question, but her eyes were assessing his clothes, the quality of the kids' jackets, the subtle signs of stability. The encounter was brief, awkward. Carla asked a few stilted questions about the children, offered vague explanations about her own life, working hard, trying to get back on my feet, and eventually drifted away, leaving a residue of unease. Nathan reassured the kids, downplaying the encounter, but inside, a warning bell sounded. A week later, the bell became a siren. Carla showed up unannounced at their house. This time, she was armed with tears and practiced remorse. Nathan, I made a terrible mistake, she sobbed on his doorstep. I was young, stupid, overwhelmed. I've regretted leaving every single day. I want to be part of their lives. Please, let me come back. For the kids. Nathan listened patiently, his heart aching for the pain she had caused, but his mind remained clear. He saw the desperation in her eyes, but not genuine maternal longing. He noted her quick glances around the entryway, assessing the comfortable, well-maintained home, a stark contrast to the struggling existence she likely endured. He gently but firmly told her that rebuilding trust, especially with the children, would be a long, slow process, and that forcing it wasn't the answer. He suggested supervised visits, family counseling, starting small. Her demeanor changed instantly. The tears dried up, replaced by a flash of resentment. So that's it? You shut me out? She snapped before catching herself and reverting to wounded vulnerability. I just want my family back. He closed the door that evening with a heavy heart, knowing this wasn't over. His initial reaction was caution layered with a deep weariness. His goal was to protect his children's emotional stability above all else, gauge Carla's true intentions without revealing his financial reality, and avoid unnecessary conflict. But her volatile reaction confirmed his suspicion. Her motives were likely far more complex and potentially dangerous than simple maternal regret. Carla's wounded retreat was short-lived. 2 weeks after appearing on his doorstep, Nathan was served with legal papers. The documents, thick with legalese and aggressive accusations, laid out Carla's demands. Immediate joint custody of all 5 children, substantial child support retroactive for 10 years, a staggering sum, and, most alarmingly, a petition to investigate Nathan's finances, alleging he had hidden marital assets before her departure and was now improperly managing funds that rightfully belonged, in part, to her as the children's mother. The lawsuit was a declaration of war. Nathan felt a cold fury replace the weary caution. This wasn't about reconnecting. It was a calculated shakedown. He immediately contacted Arthur Vance, a respected, level-headed family law attorney recommended years ago by his financial advisor for estate planning purposes. Arthur reviewed the documents, his expression growing grim. "She's playing hardball, Nathan. The retroactive support claim is weak given her abandonment, but the custody fight and financial investigation, that's where she can cause real damage, especially if she makes accusations." Nathan's first steps were defensive. He and Arthur meticulously prepared their response, denying the allegations and highlighting Carla's decade-long absence and abandonment. Nathan began the painstaking process of gathering evidence of his life as a single father. 10 years of school records, medical files, photos, testimonials from teachers, coaches, neighbors, even clients who knew his family situation. He wanted to build an unshakable mountain of proof demonstrating his unwavering commitment and the children's well-being. The complications began almost immediately. The legal process itself was invasive and stressful. Requests for financial disclosures threatened to expose Nathan's carefully guarded secret wealth. Arthur filed motions to protect sensitive financial information, arguing its irrelevance to Carla's historical abandonment, but knew it would be an uphill battle if Carla pressed the hidden marital assets claim, however baseless. Carla, guided by her aggressive lawyer, seemed determined to inflict maximum pain. She started calling the school, attempting to pick up the younger children, causing confusion and distress until the school administration, alerted by Nathan, enforced the official custody arrangements. She ambushed Emma near a part-time job, launching into a tearful, manipulative plea that left the resilient 18-year-old shaken and angry. The emotional toll on the family was significant. Mia started having nightmares. Noah became even more withdrawn. Liam's grades dipped as he struggled to focus. Ava channeled her anxiety into dark, intense artwork. Emma, trying to be strong for everyone, argued frequently with Nathan, urging him to just pay her off, to make her go away, frustrated by his insistence on fighting through the legal system. Nathan felt torn between protecting his children's present stability and securing their future by fighting the injustice. He realized passive defense wasn't enough. Carla wasn't just misguided, she was malicious. Nathan made a difficult decision. He authorized Arthur to hire a discreet, highly reputable private investigator, not to dig up dirt for mudslinging, but to fact-check Carla's narrative and understand her life over the past decade. "I need to know who we're dealing with, Arthur," Nathan said grimly. "And I need to anticipate her next move." The initial findings from the investigator, Sarah Chun, were illuminating. Carla hadn't just struggled. She had a documented pattern of instability, short-lived jobs, multiple evictions, relationships marked by financial dependency, and, significantly, several small claims court judgments against her for unpaid debts and minor contractual disputes. There was no major crime, but a clear picture emerged of someone impulsive, unreliable, and perpetually seeking an easy fix. This information strengthened their legal position, proving her inability to provide a stable environment, but it also hinted at her potential desperation, making Nathan wary of what lengths she might go to next. The battle lines were drawn, and the stakes his family's peace and his hard-won security felt terrifyingly high. The midpoint arrived with the force of a wrecking ball. The official notice from the Department of Children and Family Services, triggered by Carla's formal complaint alleging neglect and financial abuse. The abstract legal threats suddenly materialized as government officials standing in his hallway, their presence casting a pall of suspicion over the home Nathan had fought so hard to build. The DCFS investigation became the central, overwhelming reality. Caseworkers conducted scheduled and unscheduled visits. They interviewed Nathan exhaustively, probing his work hours, his finances, within legally permissible bounds initially, his parenting methods, his support systems. They interviewed each child separately, careful and professional, but the process itself was inherently traumatic. Mia cried through her interview. Noah clammed up. Ava drew pictures of monsters. Liam was defensively angry. Emma, articulate and fiercely loyal, tried to advocate for her dad, but felt the weight of the implication that their loving father was somehow suspect. Teachers were interviewed. Neighbors were questioned. Doctors' offices were contacted. Nathan's life, his family's life, was laid bare, examined under a microscope, searching for flaws defined by his accuser. He cooperated fully, transparently, providing documentation for everything, but the gnawing fear remained: what if they believed Carla's lies? What if one misinterpreted comment, one moment of frustration from an exhausted single dad, was twisted into something sinister? Simultaneously, Sarah Chun, the private investigator, delivered her comprehensive report. It went beyond the initial findings of instability. Sarah had uncovered something more concrete. 2 years prior, Carla had been involved in a business venture, an online boutique funded by a small group of local investors she charmed. The business collapsed within 6 months, and the investors were left empty-handed. While no criminal charges were filed due to lack of clear evidence of intent at the time, Sarah found emails and bank records suggesting Carla had knowingly misrepresented the business's prospects and diverted a portion of the funds for personal use before dissolving the company. It wasn't large-scale fraud, but it was a documented instance of financial deception and betrayal of trust. This confluence of events, the invasive DCFS investigation, threatening his family's core, coupled with the concrete proof of Carla's past dishonesty, fundamentally shifted Nathan's perspective. The passive defense, the patient accumulation of evidence proving his own competence, felt woefully inadequate against an opponent willing to weaponize the system and fabricate reality. He looked at his children's strained faces, saw their fear and confusion, and realized he couldn't just protect them from Carla. He had to actively stop her. This was the turning point. The gloves had to come off. His carefully guarded privacy, his desire to avoid confrontation, became secondary to the absolute necessity of neutralizing the threat Carla posed. He made a conscious decision to leverage his resources, financial and intellectual, proactively. He instructed Arthur Vance to use the information about the failed boutique and potential fraud not just defensively, but offensively, to systematically dismantle Carla's credibility. He authorized Sarah Chun to discreetly contact the defrauded investors from the boutique venture to see if they were willing to provide affidavits or cooperate. His goal transformed from mere vindication to decisive victory. He needed to expose Carla's lies so thoroughly, so publicly if necessary, that her claims would collapse under their own weight, ensuring she could never threaten his family again. This was no longer just about a custody battle. It was about protecting his children from a predator cloaked in the guise of a mother. The point of no return had been reached. He would fight fire with fire, using the truth as his weapon. The shift from defense to offense required careful strategy. Nathan, Arthur Vance, and Sarah Chun huddled, mapping out their counterattack while simultaneously managing the ongoing DCFS investigation and Carla's legal maneuvers. First, they addressed the immediate threat, the DCFS case. Nathan doubled down on cooperation, providing exhaustive documentation, financial records, redacted where legally possible to protect the source of his wealth, but showing ample provision for the children, school attendance and performance reports, medical records, detailed calendars proving his consistent presence despite work. He encouraged the older children, particularly Emma, to speak honestly with the caseworker about their lives, their father's support, and their feelings about Carla's sudden reappearance and accusations. Neighbors and teachers provided glowing character references. The goal was to present an overwhelming picture of a stable, loving, well-documented family life that directly contradicted Carla's narrative of neglect. Second, Arthur Vance used the PI report strategically. He filed motions in family court detailing Carla's history of financial instability and the evidence of the failed boutique venture, arguing it demonstrated a pattern of unreliability and questionable judgment directly relevant to her fitness as a custodial parent and the credibility of her financial claims against Nathan. He included affidavits from two of the defrauded investors Sarah Chun had located, who were furious and eager to see Carla face consequences. This preemptive strike aimed to frame Carla not as a wronged mother, but as an opportunistic individual with a history of deception. Third, Nathan tapped into his own skill set. He meticulously organized years of digital photos, videos, emails, and scanned documents, creating a searchable archive proving his involvement in every aspect of his children's lives, from school plays to doctor's appointments to family vacations. He also used his analytical skills to review the evidence Sarah Chun gathered on Carla, identifying inconsistencies in Carla's own financial declarations submitted to the court versus bank records Sarah had obtained. Carla and her lawyer fought back, filing countermotions, objecting to the introduction of the boutique evidence as irrelevant character assassination, and demanding even more invasive financial discovery from Nathan, hoping to find leverage. They scheduled depositions, aiming to rattle Nathan and catch him in contradictions. Nathan, coached by Arthur, remained calm and factual during his deposition, sticking firmly to the truth of his life as a single father in Carla's abandonment, refusing to be drawn into emotional arguments. Internally, the family regrouped. Nathan held honest conversations with the children, age-appropriately, about the lawsuit and Carla's motivations. He acknowledged their anger, fear, and confusion, validating their feelings while reassuring them of his unwavering love and protection. Emma, initially frustrated, became his staunchest ally, helping manage household logistics and offering emotional support to her younger siblings. She started researching family law online, asking Arthur insightful questions. The shared adversity began to forge an even stronger bond between Nathan and his older children, though the stress remained palpable. Sarah Chun continued her investigation, focusing now on Carla's current life. She discovered Carla was deeply in debt, facing potential eviction, and had recently been fired from a low-paying retail job. This painted a picture of increasing desperation, reinforcing the theory that the lawsuit was a last-ditch gamble for Nathan's perceived wealth. Sarah also found evidence, through public social media posts Carla hadn't secured, that Carla had been bad-mouthing Nathan to mutual acquaintances even before the lawsuit, laying the groundwork for her victim narrative. The new strategy was riskier, more confrontational, but it felt necessary. Nathan was no longer just reacting. He was actively shaping the narrative, using the truth of Carla's past and present to expose the lies driving her attack on his family. The path ahead was fraught with legal battles and emotional turmoil, but for the first time since Carla reappeared, Nathan felt a sense of agency, channeling his protective instincts into a focused plan. As the date for the final custody and financial hearing approached, the tension escalated dramatically. Carla's lawyer, realizing their initial strategy was crumbling under the weight of evidence against Carla's credibility, doubled down on the most damaging allegation: neglect. They submitted a sworn statement from a supposed witness, a disgruntled former neighbor Nathan vaguely recalled having a minor dispute with years ago over property lines. The statement contained vague but insidious claims about Nathan leaving the younger children unsupervised for extended periods and appearing overwhelmed and potentially unfit. Arthur Vance immediately began working to discredit the witness, uncovering evidence of the neighbor's own history of disputes and potential bias against Nathan. Simultaneously, Sarah Chun discovered through digital forensics, recovering deleted social media messages provided by one of the boutique investors, correspondence between Carla and this neighbor, suggesting Carla had offered financial incentive for the testimony. This potential witness tampering was explosive. Carla's lawyer also filed an emergency motion demanding immediate, full, unredacted access to all of Nathan's financial records for the past 12 years, including the source of his initial wealth, arguing it was crucial to assess whether marital assets were hidden pre-abandonment. This felt like a final, desperate attempt to either find leverage or expose Nathan's millionaire status publicly, hoping the shockwave would destabilize his case or force him into a settlement. This was Nathan's ultimate test, revealing the full extent and source of his wealth. The trade flow sale, the carefully managed investments felt like a violation of the normalcy he had painstakingly maintained for his children. It could change their lives irrevocably, attracting unwanted attention, potentially altering their relationships and sense of self. He pictured headlines, gawkers, the potential for kidnapping threats he'd always quietly feared. The alternative, however, was to fight the motion and risk appearing secretive and obstructive to the judge, potentially validating Carla's claims of hidden assets in the court's eyes. He spent a sleepless night weighing the options, the image of his children's faces paramount. He discussed it at length with Arthur and Emma. Emma, wise beyond her years, said, "Dad, the money doesn't matter as much as the truth. She can't win by lying. We know who you are." Ultimately, Nathan made the difficult decision. He instructed Arthur not to fight the financial disclosure motion head-on, but to comply strategically. They would provide the records, but frame the narrative clearly. The wealth was generated after Carla's abandonment, through his own ingenuity and hard work while raising 5 children alone. They would present it not as a secret hoard, but as proof of his resourcefulness and dedication to providing long-term security for the children, contrasting it sharply with Carla's financial irresponsibility and abandonment. It was a calculated gamble, trusting that the judge would see the context and intent, not just the dollar figures. Meanwhile, Nathan considered another proactive step. Through Arthur, he discreetly reached out to a well-respected investigative reporter at the Chicago Tribune known for meticulous, fact-based reporting on complex legal and financial matters. He provided the journalist with independently verifiable evidence of Carla's boutique fraud, the affidavits from the victims, and the public records confirming her financial instability, carefully omitting details that could compromise the ongoing custody case, but painting a clear picture of her pattern. He offered himself as an anonymous source, confirming the timeline of her abandonment. He didn't know if the reporter would pursue it, but it was another layer of truth aimed at counteracting Carla's lies. The stage was set for the final hearing. All pieces were in motion, the DCFS investigation concluding, leaning favorably towards Nathan thanks to overwhelming evidence. The financial records submitted, the witness credibility challenged, the potential news story looming. Nathan felt stretched to his limit, but resolute. He had played his hand, relying on truth and strategy. Now, he had to trust the system to see through the deception. The family courtroom buzzed with tense energy. Nathan sat composed beside Arthur Vance. Emma seated protectively behind him. Carla, across the aisle, fidgeted, alternating between tearful glances towards the judge and venomous glares at Nathan. Carla's lawyer led with a neglect narrative, calling the disgruntled neighbor. The testimony, however, crumbled under Arthur's cross-examination, revealing inconsistencies, clear bias stemming from the old property dispute, and ultimately, hints of financial inducement when confronted with timelines matching Carla's desperate messages found by Sarah Chun. The judge visibly frowned. Then came the core of Carla's case, the demand for retroactive support and a share of Nathan's assets based on the hidden funds theory. Her lawyer dramatically presented Nathan's recently disclosed financial statements, emphasizing the unexpected multi-million-dollar net worth, attempting to paint him as deceitful. Arthur Vance rose calmly. He didn't dispute the numbers. Instead, he meticulously presented the timeline: Carla's abandonment, Nathan's struggle as a single father and plumber, the late-night coding, the development of trade flow years after Carla left, the subsequent acquisition handled legally through his developer's pseudonym, and the responsible investment strategy solely focused on the children's long-term security. He presented evidence of Nathan continuing his plumbing work, the family's modest lifestyle, and his consistent investment in the children's education and well-being. He then pivoted, presenting the thoroughly documented evidence of Carla's decade of instability, her debts, the failed boutique, the affidavits from the defrauded investors, and the social media evidence of her premeditated campaign against Nathan. "Your Honor," Arthur concluded, his voice ringing with conviction, "this is not a case about hidden marital assets. This is a case about abandonment versus dedication. It's about one parent's relentless commitment contrasted with the other's opportunistic desperation." MS. Brooks didn't return out of love for her children. She returned seeking a lottery ticket when she heard Mr. Brooks wasn't destitute. Just as the lawyers finished their arguments, Arthur's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then requested a brief recess, showing the judge's screen. The Chicago Tribune had just published the investigative piece online, detailing Carla's boutique collapse and the investors' claims of deception. While not formally part of the court record, its timing underscored the evidence already presented. The judge returned, her expression stern. She addressed Carla directly. MS. Brooks, your claims are not only unsubstantiated, they appear deliberately malicious and fabricated. She systematically dismantled each of Carla's allegations, citing the overwhelming evidence supporting Nathan's parenting, the clear timeline proving the assets were generated post-abandonment, and Carla's documented history of financial irresponsibility and deception. Petition for custody modification is denied. Petition for retroactive support is denied. Petition for asset allocation is denied. The judge declared, her gavel striking sharply. Furthermore, based on the evidence presented regarding potential witness tampering and false reporting to DCFS, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review. Carla stared, aghast, as her entire case evaporated, replaced by the looming threat of criminal investigation. Nathan closed his eyes briefly, relief washing over him in a profound wave. Leaving the courtroom, Nathan was enveloped in a fierce hug by Emma, quickly joined by his other children who had waited anxiously outside with a supportive neighbor. The relief was palpable, though tinged with the exhaustion of the ordeal. The exposure of his wealth brought a new wave of attention calls from financial advisors, distant relatives emerging from the woodwork, a few intrusive media inquiries spurred by the Tribune article, but Nathan, guided by Arthur and his financial advisor, handled it calmly, prioritizing his family's privacy above all. They didn't move or drastically change their lifestyle, though Nathan did finally hang up his plumbing tools for good, focusing instead on managing his investments and philanthropic interests. The DCFS case was officially closed, citing unfounded allegations. Carla, facing potential perjury and fraud charges stemming from the judge's referral, eventually pleaded guilty to lesser charges, receiving probation and mandatory counseling, effectively removing her capacity to further harm the family. Life settled into a new normal. The children adjusted to the knowledge of their father's wealth with surprising maturity, grounded by years of his down-to-earth parenting. They were proud of his secret success, but more proud of his unwavering love and integrity. Nathan, freed from the constant financial pressure and the need for secrecy within his own family, found more time for them. He established the Brooks Family Foundation, quietly funding scholarships for underprivileged youth in the trades and STEM fields, and contributing significantly to the expansion of a local community park where his kids had spent countless hours. He found purpose not just in providing for his own children, but in creating opportunities for others. One sunny afternoon at the newly expanded park, watching Mia score a goal in her soccer game, while Noah read on a bench nearby and the older three tossed a frisbee, Nathan felt a profound sense of peace. Emma came over and sat beside him. "You okay, Dad?" He smiled, the lines of stress finally easing from his face. "More than okay." He thought of Carla, not with anger, but with a distant pity. She had sought value in dollars, abandoning the true treasures. "She left," he murmured, almost to himself, "but we built our own world right here." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. "Yeah, we did. A pretty great one." In the end, Nathan's greatest asset wasn't the money earned from code, but the resilient, loving family forged in the crucible of abandonment and reclaimed through courage and unwavering love.